Today I'm going to illustrate the making of scones and the various ways of using scone dough. I have made my scone dough and I have made two types of plain scone. The triangular scone is served for breakfast and is usually sliced in half and served with butter and cheese or Marmite, any mixture of the savory toppings that you would wish to use. Tea scones are usually round. The walls are perpendicular and they should rise enough to create a crack in the wall. And tea scones should be broken in two, not cut. Tea scones are served with jam and with cream. The other dishes that I made with scone dough are date rolls, nicely browned because of the glaze, and fruit pinwheels. In both these examples, I rolled the scone dough out, whereas with the making of ordinary scones, you do not roll the dough out. And lastly, I used scone dough to make a baked pudding. We rolled the scone dough with a rolling pin, put in a jam filling, and then poured a sauce around it and baked it in the oven. This would be served with either custard or cream. I'm going to make plain scones. I'm going to sift the flour, salt, and baking powder. And I'm going to rub in the margarine. Scones are not a rich flour mixture. They have a minimum amount of margarine in them. Lift your hands up high so that as the flour falls, it gathers air and becomes more aerated. Rub it between your fingers to break the margarine down and coat as much of the flour as you can in the fat. This prevents long gluten strands from forming and keeps the pastry short. Right, that is the mixture rubbed in. To that I'm going to add a small amount of sugar. And I'm going to add the milk little by little. Until I have a soft but not sticky dough. Use your hands for the last part of the mixing, as it's easier to judge how much more milk you must add. Use a flour dredger. Place a small amount of flour on your work surface and knead the scone dough with your fingertips, trying to get rid of all the cracks. Scone dough is not rolled out if you are making ordinary scones. You do not roll it out when you are making ordinary scones. Now I'm going to cut the dough into two and cut this piece into two again. And breakfast scones are usually triangular. Tea scones are cut with a cutter. If the cutter sticks, just put it in some flour. The remaining dough can be kneaded together again. Keep the sides perpendicular and you can cut out one more scone. The remaining piece of dough can just be shaped. Breakfast scones are triangular. Tea scones are round and cut with a cutter. Put them on a greased pan. Glaze them very slightly with egg and milk. And place them in a hot oven, 220 degrees Celsius, for 10 to 12 minutes until they are risen and brown, and then they can be served either for breakfast or for tea. Place them on the top shelf of the oven where the oven is hottest. On the top shelf for 10 to 12 minutes at 220 degrees Celsius. I have completed the rubbing in and I have added my small amount of sugar to the flour mixture. Now I'm going to add milk little by little, and I'm going to stir it using an ordinary table knife. This prevents the scone dough from becoming too hot and also prevents the gluten from over-developing. Use the knife to almost press the dough into one lump as you add the milk. That should be enough milk. Remove the dough from the knife and gather the dough together in the dish, rubbing down the sides. Small amount of flour on your surface, work surface. And then press the dough, keeping the sides perpendicular. Press out the cracks. And when you're going to cut your scones, see that the dough is a minimum of 2 centimeters thick with the perpendicular sides, as I've mentioned. Scone dough for the making of scones is not rolled with a rolling pin. Scone dough has many uses. 2 of those that I'm going to illustrate is when scone dough is made into a pudding. It's called a roly-poly pudding, and it's baked in a sauce. The second application that I'm going to show you is making of tea goodies, such as pinwheels and date rolls. Scone dough, if you leave the sugar out, can also be used to make dumplings on the top of a stew. So scone dough does have many applications. Now, to make the roly-poly pudding, here I do use a rolling pin, and I roll the scone dough out thinly. Try and prevent it from sticking to the tabletop. Once your scone dough is rolled out, spread it with jam. In this case, apricot jam. Don't make the layer of jam too thick, as it makes the pudding too sweet. Roll the scone dough up as you would a Swiss roll. Place it in a greased Pyrex bowl. Place it in the Pyrex dish with the lapped side at the bottom. Glaze it so that it becomes nice and brown. The syrup I'm going to pour around it is a cup of sugar, 2 cups of water, 15 grams of margarine, 25 milliliters of lemon juice, and 12.5 milliliters of golden syrup. Put the lid on the dish and bake it at 180 degrees Celsius until it is cooked, which will be round about 40 minutes. I'm rolling some scone dough out to make date rolls. This is just one of the uses that we can use scone dough for. You need individual dates, and you cut your dough into strips. And roll a date in the dough and glaze just where the roll meets. And cut it off. Roll the date again. Glaze. Glaze each one of the date rolls. Place them on the baking tray. With the cut side of the dough underneath. Sprinkle each one with a small amount of white sugar. This makes the crust pleasantly crunchy. Now I'm going to roll a larger piece of dough out. And I'm going to make pinwheels. Try and keep the dough in a reasonable shape by applying different amounts of pressure. That's thin enough. I'm going to paint it with melted margarine. Sprinkle it with cinnamon sugar. Give it a good layer so that the taste of the cinnamon comes through. Sprinkle that with cake mix. If you don't have cake mix, you can use any dried fruit, plain raisins, or currants, or sultanas. Then roll it up. Glaze it. And cut it into slices. Any fruit that has fallen out can just be added to the last pinwheel. Place these in the oven at 190 or 200 degrees Celsius until they are risen and golden brown, which is between 10 to 12 minutes. Today I'm going to show you how to make muffins. But before I make the variations of the muffins, I have done a little experiment to show that overbeating affects the texture of the muffins. If you look at this pan, you will see muffins that have been beaten until the ingredients are just wet, muffins that have been beaten the correct amount, and muffins that have been overbeaten. The underbeaten muffins have a small volume, and they have a close texture. The air bubbles are not very big. The correctly beaten muffins have what is known as a cauliflower top. They have a good volume and they have a much coarser texture with larger air bubbles. The overbeaten muffins have a high volume, they rise to a point, and the upper crust is very smooth. If you look closely at this half of the muffin, you will see that the air bubbles are long and seem to travel towards the top of the muffin, and they're referred to as runnels. I have made two muffin variations, a savory cheese muffin and a sweet health muffin. These are two of many muffin variations that you can make. You can add fruit, apple, blueberries, poppy seed. You can flavor them with orange, lemon, various spices to make your various different muffins. You can notice that these muffins have got a very good cauliflower top, which indicates that they have been stirred just enough without being over manipulated. These muffins are sweet health muffins served either for breakfast or for tea. I have put my whole wheat flour into my sifter, baking powder, salt, and a milliliter of ground cinnamon. I am going to sift that to mix the dry ingredients. Obviously, the bran is left behind in the sifter, so we then add that back into our flour mixture. To this, I'm going to add some brown sugar. And good handful of chopped dates. The liquid portion is an egg, milk, and oil. Which I'm going to beat. Add the liquid ingredients to the dry ingredients. Very little gluten will form in this mixture because the bran actually prevents it from forming long strands. Clean off your wooden spoon with a scraper and place your mixture into your pans. Muffins can be eaten with jam, but as they are sweet, this is not really necessary. There are my 6 muffins, which I am going to bake.